Okay, today we're going to tackle chapter 12, Sex, Evolutionary, Hormonal, and Neural Bases. It's chapter 12. So let's go ahead and get started. Maybe. There we go. Okay. The four stages of reproductive behavior. This is how all creatures react to a possibility of sexual intercourse. The first stage is sexual attraction, no matter what the creature is, whether it's a human or whether it's a mouse or a cat or a dog or a elk. Doesn't really matter. Sexual attraction is the first stage. In most species, sexual attraction cannot take place until the female is ready to reproduce. So, this isn't true of primates, especially humans, but as far as other animals are concerned, the female has to be in a state of ovulation in order for her to be sexually receptive. This can be judged by whether males approach her and how rapidly they approach her. If you've ever seen a dog in heat or a cat in heat, you know that they seem to come out of the woodwork. Um, that's what we're talking about. That's what the approach is talking about. We see the same thing in ungulates. Those are animals that with cloven hooves like deer and cows. If the female is ovulating, then the males will sniff around. They'll start fighting each other in order to determine who gets to reproduce with the female. Female will show attraction to the male by whether she allows him to approach or not. In many mammalian species, a female will demonstrate her approachability through swelling in the vaginal area that is a different color and an odor regulated by a surge in estrogen. And of course, that is usually the pheromones that we have discussed before. In most species, intercourse is not possible without full female cooperation, and we're going to see some cases of that in just a second. The second stage is the appetitive behavior. Behavior that establishes, maintains, or promotes sexual behavior. When a female is displaying this behavior, she may approach a male, she may stay close to the male, she may show alternating approach and retreat behavior. She may move in a specific manner that will result in the male mounting the female, and this is known as proceptive behavior. Proceptive behavior is where she is willing and demonstrates that she's willing to engage in intercourse. The male appetitive behavior may consist of staying near and sniffing the female on a fairly continual basis. The third stage is the actual intercourse. This is known as the copulation or the coitus stage. Copulation begins when the male puts his penis in the female's vagina, an act known as intromission. Through rhythmic movements, the male will then squirt sperm-filled semen into the female's reproductive tract. After copulation, the two will go through a period when they will not be able to re-engage in intercourse, and this is known as refractory phase. However, a male presented with another female may show a shorter refractory phase, and this is called the Coolidge effect. It comes from a Calvin Coolidge was the president of the United States. I'm not sure which number he was, but he was before Hoover, and I can't think of who he was after Taft, I think. Anyway, Coolidge was the president of the United States. They used to call him Silent Cal because he didn't say very much. But he was on a trip to the farming regions of Kansas, and they visited a chicken farm. And at the chicken farm, they were they were showing how the rooster impregnates the female, and so they had a rooster and and the female was coming around and he would mount them and of course she would reproduce with them, and the female or the Coolidge's wife, was a bit of a joker, said, "Look, Calvin, look how often he can have sex." And Calvin said, "Yeah, but look, he's not having sex with the same female. He's having sex with different females." And that's known as the Coolidge effect, the fact that if presented with a novel female, the male can reproduce almost instantaneously, and that's usually the way it works. Interesting story. I guess this isn't that interesting. I was on a softball trip to Frankfurt, Germany, and in Frankfurt, Germany, they have these live sex shows. Well, I didn't want to go to a live sex show, so I'm kind of a backwards fellow, so I didn't want to go to a live sex show. So I decided I'd go to the zoo while all the rest of my teammates were at the live sex show. So I went to the zoo and I'm walking around and I'm looking at everything, and there's kind of a small crowd around the baboon cage, and so I'm thinking, well, I wonder what's going on over there. And so when I went over there, the male and the females were kind of stomping around each other, walking around each other. He was just standing there, but the females were walking around like something was going on, like there was going to be an earthquake or something. And what was going on was that they were ovulating, and the male was going to breed with them. And here's the male standing there with his erect penis, and if a female came too close to him, he grabbed them and he had coitus with them. He copulated with them, and then he would. And it didn't take more than a couple seconds, and then he'd throw them off, and they'd start walking around. And of course, he's got this erect penis, and all the Germans are just going crazy. They're running to the telephone. We didn't have cell phones back then, so they're running to the telephone and calling up their friends. And of course, this went on for a while. I went and visited something else, and then I came back. The monkey cage was right in the middle of the zoo, and I came walking back, and the same thing was going on. The crowd was getting bigger and bigger all the time. It's really kind of interesting. Anyway, that's the way it works. And he was standing there. There were probably 10 females in there. He probably bred all 10 of them, I would imagine. Uh, Whether he impregnated them or not, I don't know. But he had intercourse with most of them. And as they walked past him, of course, he grabbed them, and there was no mounting that took place. But there was intercourse that took place. And of course, they were receptive, so he was able intromission was able to take place. When a female is ready to copulate, she will be sexually receptive, and they were all sexually receptive. Actually, they weren't all. There were probably 15 females in there, and 5 of them were way over in the corner, not wanting to get anywhere close to this guy because he was rip roaring ready to go. Stage 4 is the postcopulatory behavior. This is different in most species. The males of all mammals but primates achieve and maintain their erections with a bone in their penis called an os penis, and this is the way it works. Primates, of course, have engorgement of blood. It's the blood that allows them to have intercourse. But with other mammals, the elephant, the rhinoceros, the horse, the dogs, cats, mice, shrews, whatnot, they all have a bone that they slide down into the shaft of the penis and allows them to have intercourse. And this is known as an os penis. Os means bone in Latin. Sometimes, as with dogs, the male is unable to remove themselves from the copulatory position for minutes after ejaculation because the bone gets stuck. Especially if he's breeding with a young female that's never had puppies before, sometimes they'll get stuck, and it'll hurt her. It'll hurt both of them actually, and they start crying. But eventually, of course, things go back to normal, and he's able to uncouple with her. The whole purpose of copulation is the joining of the male and female gametes, the ova in the female and the sperm in the male. Those are known as the gametes. The sperm are gametes, and so is the ova. If the two join, the ova will become fertilized, and the union will become a zygote. So the first structure that it creates, the ova, is impregnated, and it immediately becomes a zygote. While all mammals, birds, and most reptiles fertilize inside the body, Internal fertilization, this is known as internal fertilization. Frogs and fish fertilize outside the body. This is known as external fertilization. So in order for mammals, birds, and most reptiles to reproduce, they have to have intromission has to take place between the male and the female. But as far as fish are concerned, it's something totally different. And I'm going to show that to you in just a second. If the species lays eggs outside the body as birds and reptiles do, it is called oviparity. This is known as egg birth. If the species allows a zygote to develop in the female's body, it is referred to as viviparity or live birth. And that's the way mammals are, but birds and reptiles lay eggs, and that is known as oviparity. For most creatures, there is only one sexual position that they can be in for copulation to be possible. Since most mammals walk on all fours and have a tail, reproduction can only take place if the female raises her rump and moves her tail to the side. This will usually straighten her vagina adequately for penetration, and this is known as lordosis. If a male tries to have sex with a female, if a male cat tries to have sex with a female cat, and she is not in this position right here, she has to straighten her. As you can see, she has raised her rump, and that has straightened out her vagina, and he will be able to penetrate her. Intromission will be able to take place. But if she is not in this position, if lordosis hasn't taken place, then there will be a curve in her vagina. And intromission will not be able to take place. That and the fact that the tail will be in the way. She moves her tail over to the side. For frogs to mate successfully, the male must mount the female. There is no penetration, but as the female emits her unfertilized eggs, the male must release his sperm. So they have to be in this position, and this is known as Zam Plexus. If this does not take place in or over water, reproduction will not take place. The ova have to be in water in order to be impregnated. And as you can see, she's standing on a rock, and he's on top of her. And as soon as she releases her eggs, he will release his semen, and he will impregnate as many of the eggs as his semen get to. And this is known as Zam Plexus. This position is known as Zam Plexus. This position is known as lordosis. While sexual response is extremely complex, the female anatomy for intercourse is relatively simple. Two folds of skin cover and protect the vaginal opening, the labia. These need to be there because this is very delicate tissue, and contamination is very likely, is very possible. Dirt, bacteria can get into the area, and for this reason it needs to be protected. And the protection that takes place are two folds of skin, and these are known as the labia minora and labia majora. The labia majora is on the outside, and the labia minora are folds of skin on the inside. So there are two layers of skin protecting the vagina, the very delicate reproductive area of the female. The female erectile tissue is known as the clitoris, and that is above the vaginal opening. This is similar to the penis, and we're going to find out that it comes from the same tissue. So that'll be something in the future that we're going to talk about. Since male delivery of the gamete requires penetration or intromission, the male system is more complex than that of the female. Erection takes place due to an engorgement of blood with primates, and we are humans. Humans are primates. Semen is produced in the testes and stored in the epididymis. The testes are here. Where did you go, epididymis? I don't see it there. Oh, there it is. It's right here on top of the testes. That's the epididymis. That's where it is stored. During ejaculation, the sperm travels up the vas deferens past the seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and Cowper's gland, where it picks up a viscous alkaline fluid called semen. Now, one of the ways that the female protects herself is through the labia majora and labia minora. It's very moist in there, so there's always a possibility of bacterial contamination or yeast infections, not really viral infections, not very often, but it's usually a yeast or a bacterial infection. But the way the female protects herself is that this area is very acidic. So the reproductive area is extremely acidic. Not so that it will burn somebody, certainly, but it's acidic enough that it protects her from bacteria and yeast. One of the things that happens when she ovulates, one of the things that happens with her is that this area will become less acidic. So if a male has intercourse, intromission with the female, and she is not ovulating, then the vaginal tract, her reproductive area, will be so acidic that it will kill off most of his bacteria. But as she approaches her ovulation, then this will become less acidic. However, in order for him to neutralize her acidity, the semen is very alkaline, and this is so that he can neutralize the acidity in her reproductive tract and allow the sperm to swim up to her ovaries. Normally, the male is not erect because cells in the glands of the penis, the paragigantocellular nucleus, sends serotonergic fibers down the spinal cord that inhibit erection. During sexual excitation, the forebrain inhibits the PGN, the paragigantocellular nucleus, and allows the penis to become erect. So it is the fact that he is thinking, the forebrain, the front of the brain tells him that he wants to have sex, and at that point it changes. What is normally turned off is suddenly turned on. SSRIs increase serotonin in the brain and may not allow the inhibition of the PGN, which in this case will not allow the individual to have an erection. So with some males, the SSRIs, the serotonin in the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, keeps the individual from being able to have an erection. While there's no normal or typical when it comes to sexual response, there are too many social and psychological factors. Women achieve vaginal lubrication during the excitement phase. Males have a smaller amount of lubricating exudate during erection to ease penetration. So there is a lubrication taking place, both by the female and by the male. The male's lubrication is much less, there's less volume to it. But the female lubrication tends to be adequate enough to allow penetration. With some couples, the female lubrication is not adequate enough, and it takes the male lubrication to allow him to penetrate the female. Intromission. Males typically have one basic pattern of response, but they do pass through a refractory phase after orgasm when erection is difficult. And this is pretty much it. The male gets excited. He's getting a little bit more excited. The plateau, how long does it last? With him at peak excitement, I can't really talk about minutes at this point. The plateau can last for an extended length of time or a very short period of time, and then he gets so excited that he will orgasm, and that's the way it works. So sometimes this is longer, sometimes it's shorter. Female, on the other hand, they don't have the same refractory phase that the male has. The refractory phase, he can't have sex anymore. He will not be able to have sex until he recovers. How long does it take him to recover? A lot of times this has to do with his age. The younger he is, the shorter the refractory phase. As he gets older, the refractory phase can last for a number of hours, up to days, depending on his age. Females don't have the same refractory phase. They can have multiple orgasms during bout of intercourse, or one orgasm or no orgasms. Females have rarely have a refractory phase, thus they have multiple orgasms, but they have three typical patterns of response. A, B, and C here is relatively quick, and it's a very intense orgasm. A is more like the male orgasm phase. She gets excited, she has a plateau, and then she has an orgasm, and then goes into resolution. The B is where she does not orgasm. She just has a plateau where she is very excited, and then she slowly goes into resolution. In many situations in nature, the males and females of the species are very much different in size as well as structure. In most vertebrates, the male is larger because he must battle other males for the right to reproduce. So this is the way it is with elk, this is the way it is with gorillas, this is the way it is with chimpanzees. So the male is larger than the female, and she doesn't need to be large because she doesn't have to fight anybody. But the male has to be large in order for him to be able to fight off other males. Another definition of sexual dimorphism is that the male gamete is abundant, small, and cheap, while the female gamete is large, rare, and expensive. She ovulates once, whenever, if depending on the. Let's talk about humans. A female will ovulate usually one, sometimes two ova. On rare occasions, she might ovulate three ova. Multiple times, usually it's just one. However, and because of that, she will only ovulate once a month. So she'll ovulate. She has 12 gametes in a year. The male, of course, in order for him to impregnate her, each sperm is a gamete, and he may ejaculate as many as 600 million of these gametes in any one ejaculation, depending on how long it has been, how much he can produce. As insane as this sounds, he produces tens of thousands of sperm every second. Of course, you accumulate this over a period of time, and he may be harboring, a billion sperm in his epididymis. Because of the low cost of producing sperm, males can easily gather enough nutrients and energy to impregnate millions of women. Whether males are selective or not, the odds are that they will have some offspring that survive. Females, on the other hand, have to be more selective. She's got 12 chances every year to have an offspring. He has several chances in any given night to produce an offspring. Females that carefully nurture their costly eggs are more likely to have offspring that survive to be the next generation. Thus, females must mate carefully. Males that carry many beneficial genes are more likely to provide the female's offspring with favorable genes. But how does a woman do this? How in the world does she choose which male to reproduce with? Now, I put this lecture together a number of years ago, and at that time, J-Lo was dating Ben Affleck. Well, she's doing it again. She's dating him again. And who knows, they may get married. They're both in their 50s, I think. So reproduction is probably not on the table, but the two seem to like each other, and they're dating again. The two never reproduced. I'm not saying they didn't have intercourse. I'm saying they never reproduced. And here are the individuals that she has actually married. This is Mark Anthony. She has a set of twins with Mark Anthony. I don't know how many kids she has. I don't remember. I'm not that much of a fan. I just know that that she's been married a number of times. A female most closely observe the appearance and the behavior of the male. A vigorous, healthy male is more likely to carry good genes than an unhealthy one. Thus, courtship is a period when the female assesses the genetic makeup of the male to judge the suitability as a mate. And of course, you can see I don't have all the people that she's dated, but she dated Ben Affleck, who's tall and fairly well proportioned. She married this guy, she married this guy, and she married Mark Anthony, who's a little bit shorter than she is. And she actually reproduced with him. And she was dating Alex Rodriguez for a while, the famous baseball player with all the home runs. And they did not last. I guess she broke up with Alex Rodriguez in order to marry, or in order to date Ben Affleck. Anyway, I like I said, I'm not really a fan. I just noticed that she's very popular. So that whenever she's dating someone new, I tend to hear about it. Oops, what's the wrong way? There are 4 mating strategies that are used in the animal kingdom to ensure offspring survival. The first is promiscuity. Females will mate with more than one male or as many as they can in any mating season. This will ensure that the male with the most attributes going for him is more likely to be the sire. This is the way it works in the chimpanzee community. A female comes into estrus. She is able to reproduce, so she will copulate with all the males in the group. Of course, she selects the first, her favorite male first, gets to copulate first, and then all the other males after that. And this is known as promiscuity, where the female actually has intercourse with any number of men in order, and of course, no one's exactly sure. Maybe they know. I don't know. Maybe they know, and maybe they don't know. But anyway, that's the way that works. Polygamy, also known as polygamy, is where the male maintains a harem of females that he will exclusively mate with. Most ungulates mate in this fashion, as do gorillas and elephant seals. They will maintain a harem. This individual evidently has a harem. There's his bride, and here's his other 3 wives. And it all depends on when he married them. I guess this is the oldest one. This is number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3, and this is his new wife, number 4. This is also practiced. Polygamy is also practiced by many humans around the world. Not in the United States, Africa. It's very popular in Africa. Trying to think where else. Not in Asia, not in India, not in Japan, but in South America. Most of the American Indian groups had polygamy, and some of them had polyandry. Polyandry is rarer than polygamy, but is still known to occur. In polyandry, one woman mates with more than one man, but those men can only mate with a single female. This is practiced in Tibet. It was also practiced among some American Indian tribes, mostly not plains tribes. What am I thinking? The woodland tribes of the Midwest, Indiana and Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois. Those tribes, the women would own all the property. They were a matriarchy, and she would select a mate. And if he were in the village, then she exclusively would live with him. But she would have, if he left to go hunting, then she could select another mate to have, and so it was really kind of interesting when he would come back to the village where she lived. He would have to send a messenger in to ask her if he could come into the village. She owned all of his stuff. Um, she owned the land. She owned the tools for farming, and he would have to ask her if she could come in. He could come in because she might have, boyfriend number 2 or husband number 2 actually, or husband number 3 or whatever. So these are normally, if it's polyandry or polygamy, they will marry siblings. So these are two brothers, and this is the woman, and these are the three children. Now the question is, well, whose child are these? Are they his or are they his? The answer is it really doesn't make any difference because the genetic material of these two guys is pretty close to the same. Could potentially be fairly identical. Monogamy is the most prevalent mating method among humans. In monogamy, a pair will form a mating pair where exclusive access is maintained between both the male and the female. This seems to be the best manner in which women can gain resources from the male when he must provide for his children to ensure that they survive. And that's the way it is in the United States, of course. That's the way it is in most of the South American countries. That's the way it is in China and India and in Japan. So there you go. Monogamy is very popular. Polygamy is practiced in some Muslim countries. It's practiced, monogamy, however, is practiced among Christians. It's practiced among the Jewish population. So there you go. Sexual selection takes place when the female selects the male that they wish to mate with. Sexual selection among birds is the most garish of all creatures. In order to attract a female, a male will weigh himself down with impossible structures, such as a peacock's tail. And of course, the bigger the tail, the more likely that he will be the one that is allowed to reproduce. The smaller the tail, the less likely they are to ever reproduce. Some species participate in intricate mating rituals during courting that are not only garish but call attention to themselves from predators. Almost all male birds have intricate songs that they sing in the spring during mating to attract a female. In some species, courting is extensive. Among large cats, only vigorous exercise over several days will bring the female to ovulation. This is the way it is with the cheetah. The female cheetah has to be run for 2-3 days straight in order for her to start ovulating. So what will happen is the male will chase her and he will force her to run. And what will have to happen? She needs to go for 48 to 72 hours straight. So sometimes a group of males will chase her. And the group of males usually have to do with brothers. They will take turns chasing the female and getting her to ovulate. It's the only way to reproduce. The Wadabi males of Niger are trying to charm females with their eye movements and their makeup. Among the Wadabi, these individuals are the only ones. The female doesn't get dressed up nearly like the male does, and if he can move his eyes independently, he is considered to be a good husband. So that's what they will do. They will make faces and move their eyes in interesting ways. I have a film. This should be interesting. This.
The men sing and sway to gain attention. They flutter their cheeks, cross and roll their eyes and grin. Whites of eyes and teeth are considered particularly beautiful. A man who can roll one eye and grin at the same time is considered especially desirable. The Garawal bring two different Wadobi lineages together, allowing each clan to propagate. Parents arrange first marriages at birth, and only cousins of the same lineage may marry. After that, they may seek a partner from another lineage. Mo Reube works his charm on Mary Moore. It appears to be working. The young wife decides she will allow him to steal her from her husband.
I'm with a husband that I don't like, and when I saw More Ube, he was the best.
He was better than any of the others, so that's why I agreed to marry him and go home with him.
A Wadabi woman can't be taken against her will, though what More Ube is about to do in the name of love can still have fatal consequences.
If they get caught en route, then the husband has the right to require her to come back. If she disagrees, doesn't want to go back, there can often be a fight, and it can be to the death.
More Ube must plan carefully to steal his new wife and not lose his life.
I go to see the girl, and I explain to her that I want her. And if she says that she wants me, then I look for her husband. If he doesn't see me, I sneak up on the ground. If she accepts, I say come and look around. If I hear somebody coming, I hide.
The moment of truth arrives. Under cover of darkness, More Ube heads toward Mario Moore's camp, not knowing if he will be greeted by her husband's sword.
The ideal is if she makes it all the way to the new husband's house without being caught, and then she has the full right to stay.
The new day will reveal whether More Ube's dangerous gamble pays off. The Wadabi are nomadic. They travel the desert and its fringes in extended family groups. This Garawal is an opportunity to mix between those groups and widen the gene pool for each clan. The men can have many wives, but when a Wadabi woman becomes pregnant, she will return to her mother's home, where she will remain for 3 or 4 years. During that time, she must not see or speak with her husband, and he is free to gather more wives. It is early morning, the day after the Garawal. More Ube returns from his quest. Last night, the game of love went his way. When he snuck into Mario Moore's camp, fate or good fortune were on his side. Her husband was not there.
There you go. True love. Go. Okay, let's look at another group. Let's look at the Maasai. That's the way the Wadabi do it. These are the Maasai who live east of the Wadabi.
Watch where you're stepping.
Okay, there's a reason for why they're jumping and why they find that attractive. As you can see, they were all about the same height, um, and the higher they jump, the more attractive they appear to the female in the Maasai tribe. What does that mean? Why are they jumping? They are cattle herders. They herd cattle. So here they have a group of cows, uh, and they have to protect them. And one of the ways they protect them is to identify lions coming in, or coyotes. They're not coyotes, of course. This is Africa. Jackals. To identify something that might potentially hurt their herd. So they jump and to look over the horizon, to look over a hill. They will jump like that, and so the higher that they can jump, the more likely that they are to be able to protect their herd, and that makes them more attractive to the females. Monogamy, of course. Why moving your eyes independently is attractive to them, I'm not exactly sure. But as you can see, that is what has to happen in order for them to attract a female. And this is what female Wadabis look like, and this is what female Maasai look like. The two different groups that we just observed. Sexual differentiation takes place among most humans while still in the womb. Sperm either carries a male or female chromosome. All ova are female. So if it was up to the female would have only girl babies. But it is the sperm of the male that decides whether the zygote will develop as a male or a female. If you look at most males' sperm, it's about 60-40. 60% of the sperm will be male, and 40% will be female. However, if the individual impregnates his mate at the beginning of the ovulatory cycle, then he's more likely to have a female. The sperm are smaller and they swim faster, and they're more likely to win the race if it's at the beginning or the end of the ovulatory cycle. They're more likely to have males if it's in the middle of the female's ovulatory cycle. We can. See, I used to do this. I used to. Oh God. When I was a laboratory technician, one of the things that I was given the task to do was semen analysis to determine if the male was had problems, would potentially have problems reproducing. Normally, yeah, it's not like everybody and their cousin were bringing in semen specimens. It was only if they were having problems ovulating, or not ovulating, but impregnating their spouse. Thus, males are heterogametic, are a heterogametic sex because of the two different chromosomes, X or the Y, while females are homogametic, or X. Very early in the development, the gonads are not differentiated, and this is known as the indifferent gonads. So as the baby is a zygote, when it is a zygote, it has indifferent gonads. You can't tell if it's going to be a male or a female until later on. In mammals, the Y chromosome contains an SRY gene that is responsible for the development of the testes. If the individual has a Y chromosome, the cells of the indifferent gonads begin making SRY protein. The SRY protein causes the core of the cells to proliferate over the outer layer of the cells, and the gonad becomes a testis. In other words, it becomes a testes. And that's what males look like. And of course, that's what females look like. Just kidding. If the individual has no Y chromosome, no SRY protein is produced, and the indifferent gonads form with the outer layer dominant and the inner core is inhibited. As the fetus begins to form, they develop two ducts that connect the indifferent gonads to the cell wall, the Wolffian duct and the Mullerian duct. If bathed in testosterone from the testes, the Wolffian duct will develop. If not, the Mullerian duct will develop. If the SRY protein is released by the Y chromosome, the gonads become testes and bathe the area in testosterone. The Wolffian duct develops into the vas deferens, the epididymis, and the seminal vesicle. The Mullerian duct will disappear. The genital tubercle becomes a penis, and the genital fold becomes a scrotum. If both the chromosomes are X's, the gonads become ovaries. The Mullerian duct develops into the fallopian tubes, the uterus, and the inner vagina. The Wolffian duct disappears. The genital tubercle becomes a clitoris, and the genital fold becomes the labia majora and minora. Testosterone from the testes releases a hormone called anti-Mullerian hormone that shrinks the Mullerian duct. It causes tissue around the urethra to form the prostate gland. It causes epithelial tissue around the urethra to form a scrotum and a penis. The epithelial cells have 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which allows masculinization. And that's the reason why little boys act differently than little girls do, because of this masculinization. If the sperm or ova do not have a sex chromosome, the individual will have only one X chromosome. This individual has Turner syndrome and will be a female. They have short stature and not develop secondary sexual characteristics. And this is Helen Hunt. I think that's her name. She's on CSI, not CSI, NCIS Los Angeles. She has Turner syndrome, and that's why she is so short. She has played males in movies. As a matter of fact, she won an Academy Award for a movie called Year of Living Dangerously, where she played a male reporter from Indonesia with Sigourney Weaver, and this was, what's his name? I can't think of his name. Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was in that movie as well. Anyway, Helen Hunt. This is an individual with Turner syndrome, and this is her sister. I don't have this. There we go. Let me turn it back on so I get an arrow. This lady has Turner syndrome, as does this individual. This is her sister, and this is her sister. As you can see, she's much shorter, and she doesn't really have secondary sexual characteristics. You can see the breast tissue on this female, and you see very little on this one, if any at all. Same way with these two individuals. This individual has no breast tissue, and this individual does. Both of these individuals have Turner syndrome, as does Helen Hunt. If the female fetus is exposed to androgens in the uterus, she might develop congenital adrenal hyperplasia, also known as CAH. The overactive adrenal glands will produce more androgen and cause genitalia that appears as either an undersized penis or an oversized clitoris. And that's what it looks like. I had a neighbor when I was I was stationed in Lubbock, Texas, and their daughter was born without any labia. As interesting as that is, she didn't have a labia minora or majora. She did have a clitoris, but it was really kind of curious. I was a medic when I was in the service, and they would call me over from time to time because of interesting problems that they had. What they did, eventually they had to do surgery because there wasn't enough protection from bacterial infection. She was getting urinary tract infections, so they had to usually from her feces. So what they had to do was they had to take skin from a different part of her body and create labia to protect her vaginal opening. Since the androgen receptor is on the X chromosome, if an XY individual has a defective androgen receptor. They will not be sensitive to the andronergic hormones. These individuals are referred to as androgen insensitive. These individuals will develop external female genitalia and develop all secondary female sexual characteristics except for the menarche and have a shallow vagina. And these are individuals that have that problem. Androgen insensitive. There are a group of males in the Dominican Republic whose 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which allows a penis and scrotum to form, is mutated. Despite the fact that the individual has an XY chromosome structure, the lack of 5-alpha reductase does not form a penis. The area that looks like a vagina has no vaginal opening. Because they do have testes with puberty, their bodies, that's what guava-doces means, eggs at 12. Doces is the word for 12. So when they start going through puberty, of course, they do produce testes, and it does produce testosterone, and they can become a male if they choose to become one. At 12, their body is bathed in testosterone. They develop a penis. Their hips will narrow like a male rather than a female, and their build turns obviously masculine. And this is the same. This is an individual who was guava-doces at 42. This is what potentially he looked like as a baby. These individuals who were raised and acted like females suddenly begin looking and acting like males. Most will become males, but not all of them. And this is an individual, and as you can see, his penis is relatively small, but this is what he looked like as a 4-year-old. He still looked like a young lady at age 8. This is what he looked like at age 12. And this is what he looked like at age 19. As you can see, his musculature has changed. He certainly didn't look like a female. He certainly didn't look like a male. He looked like he was going to have male or female musculature. That's what he looked like at 18 months. Looked like a little girl. And of course, eventually he grew a penis. And of course, this is a picture of an individual that actually grew a penis, but at the same time, they maintained the fact that they were female. This is another individual that is a guava-doces. As you can see, she has male musculature, but she has breast tissue. I don't know whether she has a penis or not. And this is a little, an individual that is just starting to gain his, that's what he looked like later on. This is what he was raised as a little girl, starting to look like a male, and that's what he looked like eventually. Anyway, there you go, guava-doces. Fascinating stuff. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. Oh, this is Physiological Psych, 255. Okay. Couldn't remember what class I was teaching. All right, yeah, that's some interesting stuff. Anyway, that's all we're going to talk